Hi, boys and girls. Can you believe it's the last week of school? I put this background on because I miss you guys so much. I just love seeing you. Well, today and the rest of this week, we're going to work on writing a fictional narrative, just one story throughout the week. Now, in order to do that, we have to learn a few things. And one of the things we want to learn is how to start a story. Now, a lot of people start at once upon a time or once there was, but you know what? Those aren't the best starts. The best starts are ones that hook the reader and make them want to read more. And so we're going to practice. These are called writing introductions. So there's stronger ways and there's weaker ways, just like we talked about stronger questions and kind of easy peasy questions. Well, this today we're going to talk about is stronger starts versus kind of weak starts. We could look at this little girl here and we could say, once a girl was falling. That's kind of boring to start that way. What about if we said, all of a sudden Sally screamed? Wouldn't we want to read more about what happened to Sally? Yeah. Let's look at this picture right here. Now I could do a weak starter. I could say, once my family had a barbecue in the backyard. Now that might be a fun story, but it's kind of boring. Listen to this start. All of a sudden, the smell of barbecue wafted through the window. Doesn't that make you excited to hear more about my barbecue? The smell. Yeah, when we start talking about our senses, like hearing and smelling, it makes a more exciting starter to our story. Look at this little boy right here. Once Johnny was very sad. Once upon a time, a little boy was sad. Those are just kind of weak starters, right? Let's try it like this. Johnny was just sobbing. He didn't know where his cat was. You see how that's a better start? Because we want to know now if Johnny's going to be able to find his cat. It got to our senses again. That was our feelings, right? Look at this swing. Now, a swing's kind of boring in itself because there's nothing emotional about a swing right there, except if we add emotion to it. Sometimes we can start a story with a question. We could say something like, don't you love going up in a swing? Or you could say, aren't swings just the best? You could ask a question like, do you have a swing set in your backyard? Asking questions is a good way to hook your reader because it gets them thinking about themselves, and that makes connections. Can you think of a question we could ask right here to get the story started? How about this one? Isn't basketball just the best? Right? I bet you can think of one for this one. Let's do a different kind. Let's do a statement. Would we say, one time my dog stole my sausage? That's okay. What if we started like this? Rover, get back here. That's my sausage. Yeah, can you see how that's more fun and more exciting just to keep reading? All right. Now, I'm not sure about this one. I'll let you think about that one. What would be a good story starter for that one? Okay, and today I'm going to read you a story. It has a pretty good story starter. And as you're reading the story, I want you to use your imagination. This is a fictional narrative. It's another Dicky Bird story. Remember Dicky Bird who had his elephant? Yeah. So we're going to do a story about Dicky Bird's camel this time. Let's see if we can get it going here. Not quite on the right page. There we go. Okay, this is all about Dicky Bird's camel. Dicky Bird's camel was not much to look at. In fact, she was very, very plain. Even her name was plain. It was Plain Jane. but that may have been because wild camels live on the plains. She was made of flannel, of gingerbread brown, and was stuffed with excellent quality of white cotton batting. But alas for poor plain Jane, it was the gingerbread brown outside of her that people saw, and they didn't realize that beneath her insignificant exterior was a heart of the purest cotton. And so, in spite of her excellent qualities, plain Jane was sometimes neglected. Dicky Bird loved her when he thought about it, but he was so busy playing with his more brilliant toys that he didn't think about it very often. So plain Jane was sad, and she said to Dicky Bird's elephant, "Maybe if I had a magnificent blanket like yours, all made of red velvet and lavishly decorated with diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, all made of the very finest quality of glass, Dicky Bird would love me oftener." "But, my dear plain Jane," said the elephant, "you couldn't wear a blanket like mine if you had it, not with those humps on your back." It was true. Plain Jane was what the geography books called contours, and it would have been impossible for her to wear a blanket. "Well," sighed plain Jane, "maybe I could have a sash, a red sash, tied around my waist and in a lovely bow between my humps." "But how are you going to get a red sash?" asked the elephant. "I don't know," admitted plain Jane, "but I'll keep on trying till I do." Well, one day Dicky Bird thought he would play circus, so he brought all the animals under the big butternut tree in the garden. At first, he tried jumping his 6 wooden soldiers over the elephant, and then over the camel, and then over both of them together. And when he got tired of that, he got a long willow switch, and he made it into a hoop, and he jumped the elephant and the camel through it. And by, Dicky Bird's real live dog came, and he wanted to play too. So he stood on his hind legs and he walked around and around, and he barked till Mr. and Mrs. Cyril Squirrel, who lived in the butternut tree, put their heads out of their hole to see what all that noise was about. Then Dicky Bird's dog caught sight of plain Jane as she stood waiting for her turn to jump through the willow hoop. And being in a frisky and frolicsome mood, he pounced down upon her, and he seized her in his mouth, and he ran away with her. Come back," called Dicky Bird. But Dicky Bird's dog was having a beautiful time, and instead of coming back, he laid down with plain Jane between his paws. There he lay without moving anything but the tip of his tail till Dicky Bird had almost reached him. Then he jumped, grabbed Jane by the mouth, and ran away again. Dicky Bird had to chase him all over the garden before he caught him. But alas and alack, when Dicky Bird finally did get plain Jane back, what do you suppose he found? In plain Jane's sides were 2 great holes where the dog's sharp teeth had gone through the gingerbread-colored flannel, and the white cotton batting was sticking through like 2 powder puffs. It hadn't hurt plain Jane, but Dicky Bird thought he'd better not play with her anymore until his mother had mended her, so he left her under the butternut tree. And then, what do you suppose? He forgot her. All the rest of that morning, plain Jane lay under the butternut tree, and nobody came near her. And there she lay all that bright summer afternoon. And when it grew dark and the big silver moon climbed up in the sky, there was poor plain Jane still lying under the butternut tree, and nobody came near her. The silver moon climbed up and up so high. Let me see if I can share my screen. Sorry, off in place here. At last, the moon could see down into the branches of the butternut tree and peep into the hole where Mr. and Mrs. Squirrel were keeping house. When the moon shone up upon her, Mrs. Squirrel woke up with a jump, and she called to her husband in a very fast and all one breath. Cyril, wake up. It's very late. I want you to get me 3 rosebuds, 7 nuts, and some new lining for the house. And But Cyril Squirrel was fast asleep, all rolled up in a nice little ball with his tail over his nose, and he didn't hear a word Mrs. Squirrel had said. Then Mrs. Squirrel pushed him and poked him until at last he opened one sleepy eye and murmured, "Yes, my dear, I'll get up," and then he went to sleep again. You should have heard Mrs. Squirrel scold. Even Mr. Squirrel did at last, and he woke up in earnest, and he rubbed his eyes, and he said, "Yes, my dear, 3 nuts and 7 rosebuds." "No, no, no," cried Mrs. Squirrel. "You're getting it all wrong. 3 rosebuds, 7 nuts, and lining for the house. But bring me samples from all the stores." "Yes, my dear," said Mr. Squirrel meekly. 7 samples, 3 rosebuds, and nuts from all the stores." "Oh, my goodness," cried Mrs. Squirrel. "I'll have to send you for one thing at a time. You're mixing them all up. Now listen carefully. I want you to bring me 3 rosebuds." "3 rosebuds," repeated Mr. Squirrel obediently. "Now keep saying that over and over to yourself," cautioned Mrs. Squirrel, "and don't forget it." So Mr. Squirrel ran down the trunk of the butternut tree, across the garden to the rose bushes, and all that time he kept saying to himself, "3 rosebuds, 3 rosebuds." It worked beautifully. Before Mrs. Squirrel had got the house in order, Mr. Squirrel came hopping into the door with 3 fat rosebuds in his mouth. "Now, the nuts," she said. 7 nuts. 7 nuts, 7 nuts, repeated Mr. Squirrel as he ran down the tree trunk to the ground, and there he hunted among the roots of the tree in the thick grass, and in almost no time he had collected 7 nuts and was just about to run up the tree with them when suddenly caught sight of the small dark object at the foot of the tree. "Maybe it's a cat," he thought in a great fright, but it wasn't a cat. It kept still and didn't move a single bit, and by Mr. Squirrel plucked up the courage and crept cautiously nearer. And what do you suppose he found? Why, Dicky Bird's camel lying just where Dicky Bird had left her. Well, Cyril Squirrel walked all around the camel, and by he saw the white cotton batting sticking out of the holes of Plain Jane's side, and he thought, "Oh, what a soft, lovely lining that would make for our house. I think I'll take it to my wife. No, I think I will take her a sample of it." So Cyril Squirrel pulled out a little bit of the cotton batting, and it didn't hurt Plain Jane a bit. In fact, she was very proud to have its excellent quality appreciated. Then Cyril Squirrel ran up the tree and brought his wife 7 nuts and the sample. "My dear," she cried, what is this? This is beautiful. Where did you get it?" "At the foot of the tree," began Mr. Squirrel. "There's a camel." "A camel? Nonsense," interrupted his wife. "There hasn't been a camel here since the circus left." "Well, this camel," persisted Mr. Squirrel, "is stuffed." "Then it ought to be in a museum," affirmed his lady. "Well, there's a hole in its side," continued her husband. "Then it ought to be in the hospital," said his wife. "Well, it isn't." Mr. Squirrel went on patiently. "She's right at the foot of the tree, and this is a sample of the stuffing." "Well, why couldn't you say so?" demanded Mrs. Squirrel, "instead of expecting me to drag it out of you. All that good cotton batting going to waste. Come on, bring the clothes basket and carry it home in. So Mrs. Squirrel ran down the tree, and Mr. Squirrel ran down the tree, and the clothes basket bumpity bumpity bump bump after them, and they filled that clothes basket just full of white cotton. Then between them they carried that basket bumpity bump 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 up the tree again, and then down again they went, and they filled it again, and they kept going until the moon went home and the sun was peeping over the edge of the world. And by that time there wasn't a single bit of cotton left inside Plain Jane. She was just as flat as a gingerbread camel could be. The first thing that morning, right after breakfast, Dicky Bird came running down to the butternut tree, for he had suddenly remembered that he had left Plain Jane out on the grass all night, and he was awfully afraid that something might have happened to her. And when he saw her lying under the butternut tree, just as flat as a pancake, he was too astonished to cry. But suddenly he knew right then and there how fond he really was of Plain Jane and how much he would really miss her. Very tenderly he picked up Plain Jane's outside, which was all that was left of her, and he carried her into his muddy. That's what he calls his mom. Dicky Bird's Muddy was almost as astonished as Dicky Bird when she saw Plain Jane. What could have happened? She asked. Can you fix her, Muddy? Asked Dicky Bird anxiously. Oh, yes, I think so, said Muddy comfortably. She was a wonderful woman, was Muddy. So Muddy sat down with her work basket, and Dicky Bird leaned against her knee, and Dicky Bird's Muddy stuffed Plain Jane all full of new cotton batting. Then she put a gingerbread colored patch on each side to cover up the holes so that Plain Jane was almost as good as new. But Muddy wasn't quite satisfied. I don't like the look of those patches, she said. She thought for a moment, and then she laughed and said, Run up to my room, Dicky Bird, and bring down what you find in the right-hand corner of my top bureau drawer. So Dicky Bird went up and got it. And what do you suppose it was? It was a wide red ribbon. Then Muddy tied the ribbon around Plain Jane's waist and made it into a sumptuous bow between her humps. That covers the patches nicely, she said. And that is how Plain Jane got the red sash she had wanted so long. And that's why no matter how many toys he has, Dicky Bird always remembers to love his Plain Jane. All right, so your assignment, boys and girls, today is to get an idea of what you want to write about. Maybe it's a stuffed animal of yours that comes to life. Maybe it's one of your pets, or maybe it's an imaginary pet. Whatever it is, imaginary friend, whatever you want to write about, think about the topic and write a really strong start to your story. And that's all you have to do today. And then tomorrow, we're going to talk more about setting and characters in your story. So have fun writing your strong start today. Remember, it can be something that appeals to our senses. It can be a question or a strong statement, or it can be even a noise, right? Enjoy writing that starter, and I will talk to you tomorrow.